Hello everybody and welcome to Edshed. Today I have got the top 10 most played MMORPGs in 2018. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now this list is in no particular order, so I'm just going to get right into the first game. As I say, no particular order, so they're just going to come out as they come out. So to start things off, we have got the Elder Scrolls Online. While it was met with a pretty rough reception and a reasonably large amount of criticism, it has been updated consistently, and the team that have been working on it have done a really great job to do some fantastic updates and add some excellent DLC. It's definitely worth playing or revisiting if you've perhaps tried it in the past and it wasn't for you. The console community is significantly larger than the PC version, but there is still plenty of active players on both. You might have to look a little bit harder to find a dungeon party than you would have when it first launched, but that's kind of expected of any MMORPG. Still one to definitely pick up if you're a brand new to it, or want to revisit if you haven't played it since launch, as there have been some massive improvements to it. Next up we have got Guild Wars 2, and if you're a regular on this channel you'll know that I love Guild Wars 2, and it's still got a thriving player base and a really active PvP scene. But it doesn't have as large a community as it did during its prime, maybe 4 or 5 years back, but you can still find pretty much people to do any activity in the game with you, and on certainly the large world events and world versus world, there's a huge crowd that you can join, along with many active guilds to meet great people in the game. You also tend to find that it's got huge spikes around any expansions that come out, as well as smaller spikes when any of the Living Stories updates come out. So if you haven't tried Guild Wars 2 yet, definitely give it a go. It is one of the best MMORPGs to have come out in a long time in my opinion. Next we've got the Secret World. Now this is definitely one of the smallest player bases that's going to be featured on this list, and in terms of the actual game, it is a deeply flawed game, if I'm being truthful. There is lots of clunky gameplay, and when I've played it there are definitely certain things that feel just not quite right, but it's still one of the best games I've played, or one of the best MMORPGs I've played, and it's a really amazing game with a really interesting story and premise behind it, as well as containing some mechanics that you just don't see in other MMORPGs. Some of the puzzle mechanics and how they are implemented, I don't want to give any spoilers to it, but they are so different to other games, and there are certain moments when you're playing that where you go, oh! And it's such an interesting game to play, and so different to perhaps anything else you've played if you play a lot of MMORPGs. So definitely give it a go if you're in the mood for something quite different, something a bit under the radar that maybe lots of people don't play. It's one that you will tell your friends about, because there are some fantastic moments in that game. And you knew it was going to be on the list somewhere, you didn't know where, but it is WoW. And WoW is an unstoppable juggernaut, and in my opinion that is because people have such a huge emotional investment in it. It is not going away for a long time, and still has a massive active player base. This isn't even just total accounts, the actual amount of people that log on and play on it is still huge and blows, I think, every single other MMO out of the water. Now, if you've never played WoW, maybe you're a bit too young to have played it, it is still a fantastic time to pick it up for the first time and understand a game that has changed the video gaming industry like few others ever will. And if you have played WoW in the past, why not go back and give yourself a healthy dose of nostalgia? And certainly with the classic servers coming out, when you get a chance, why don't you pop onto one of them and revisit something that you probably sank far too many hours into. Although, if like me you now have a lot more obligations outside of video gaming, then maybe don't sink quite as many hours into it. So now we have got Black Desert Online. Now, there was a lot of hype around this game, and it certainly had massive numbers when it initially launched. But there was a quite significant drop in those numbers after the initial launch, with some players complaining of a pay-to-win system in it. But with the impressive graphics and the constant updates of new classes, as well as, let's be honest, its beautiful graphics, This game has managed to continue to attract new players and continue to grow, especially with it recently becoming available on Steam. It has seen another huge uplift in players and is definitely something to check out, as there are very few games that look as good as this do. So EVE Online is one of the oldest games on this list, and it is likely to be around for a lot longer. It has a very, very loyal player base and is now free to play. It's probably one of the best sci-fi MMORPGs ever. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments on that, but in my opinion it is an incredible game and is possibly the best sci-fi MMORPG ever. It also boasts some very unique systems that you don't see in other games, such as the ways to make money and currency and the different career paths that you can progress down in the game. If you've never tried EVE Online before, then now is a fantastic time to pick it up with it being free to play, and is something truly unique in the MMORPG arena. Runescape is a hugely old game at this point, but it still has a loyal player base and manages to attract new players regularly. With more content updates planned for the game, it isn't going anywhere anytime soon, so maybe you're revisiting it, or maybe it's your first time playing it, but it's definitely worth making 2018 a year where you play some Runescape. Whether it's for nostalgia, or whether you're wanting to see some gaming history in the flesh, it's a game that you should definitely be playing throughout the year. TERA. There is still a large base despite the issues around the launch, in terms of a lot of people reaching the endgame content and discovering that there was very little to do. But similar with the Elder Scrolls Online, the team has been very active in providing new content and regular updates, which have really provided a lot more for players to do and a lot of reasons for old players to go back to it. Its player base is now at a pretty healthy level, and it's a game that you can definitely go back to and see if perhaps now it's the game you originally wanted to play if you left it after reaching max level before. So Final Fantasy XIV, having performed a heroic comeback from a very, very poor start, it now is one of the largest player bases out there and a huge amount more content than it did to start. Now if you haven't played it, now is definitely the time to get into it, as it is at probably its peak, or it's certainly on its way to its peak, so it's a brilliant time to get on board that bandwagon and feel what it's like to be in an MMORPG when it's really in its prime. And if you perhaps played it at start and you didn't like it, it's another one of those games where they have really tweaked it, refined it, added more stuff, and is now worth going back to. So definitely one to check out if you haven't already, or give a revisit if you perhaps have left it because it wasn't quite right when you first got it. So finally we come to Blade and Soul. Definitely on the smaller side of active player bases, but with new expansions earmarked, it's something that you should definitely consider giving a go, or maybe going back to again if you've played it before. And it's one of those games where I really hope that it does well, as it seems to be struggling to grow, but it has got some really great mechanics and gameplay in it, and I think that it deserves to do a lot better than it actually is. So give it a go and see what you think of it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit that like and subscribe button, and hopefully I will see you again in the next video.